I still remember the first moment she appeared. Heels clicking, lips pressed together, her whole attitude taking over the hallway before she even said a word. It was a regular Monday morning, and I was at my desk, lost in my usual routine, checking client schedules, confirming lunch meetings, and preparing notes for the weekly operations meeting. These were the behind-the-scenes tasks that never showed up on a balance sheet but were absolutely essential to keeping the company running smoothly. For 15 years, I'd been the executive assistant to Jerry Garcia, the founder and CEO of Garcia & Company, a well-respected consulting firm in Detroit. Jerry had built the company from the ground up. I joined in the second year, back when we shared a tiny office with a broken coffee machine and barely a handful of clients. Over the years, I witnessed the company grow through tough times, legal troubles, and 2 complete rebrands. I was there for all of it. So, when the elevator doors opened and out walked Karen Garcia, Jerry's 30-year-old daughter, I sensed a shift immediately. She didn't greet me or make eye contact. Instead, she strolled past my desk like I was just part of the furniture. That was better than what came next. She stopped, turned back to me, sunglasses still on, and asked, "Patricia, right? You're the secretary?" I smiled politely and corrected her. "Executive assistant to the CEO." She smirked. "Right, well, that position isn't needed anymore. I'm restructuring the team. We're going for a more modern, dynamic, agile company structure. Flat hierarchy, you know?" I blinked, trying to process her words. "Sorry, you've been here how long, 12 years? 13, I answered quietly. 13, she repeated, almost as if it was something to be ashamed of. "That's a long time behind a desk. But we're moving in a new direction. Effective immediately, your role is redundant." Just like that, I was dismissed. No warning, no meeting, not even a proper explanation, just a cold goodbye on a Monday morning. Still, I managed to stay calm and composed. After more than a decade in corporate America, you learn the power of keeping quiet. "No problem," I said. Karen looked surprised at how easily I accepted it. No drama, no begging, no tears. "Great," she said with a wave of her perfectly manicured hand. "Pack up before lunch. HR will be in touch about your last paycheck." Then she vanished into her new glass office, Jerry's old office. I sat at my desk, letting it all sink in. It wasn't that I hadn't seen this coming. Jerry had hinted for months that he was preparing his daughter to take over, but I hadn't expected it to happen like this. Not with so little respect. I quietly packed my things. Some coworkers glanced over, but no one dared say anything. A few looked sympathetic, but I didn't blame them. It's hard to stand up for someone when the boss's daughter is swinging the sword. By noon, I was gone. I drove home in silence, my heart racing at every stoplight. Not because I was scared, at least not only because of that, but because I knew things that Karen didn't. I knew how every client liked their meeting scheduled, how each contract was filed, which customers needed a handwritten thank you note, and which ones would leave if they didn't hear a familiar voice on the phone. I had been the silent engine that kept everything running. Not flashy, not loud, but essential. And now I was out. Just like that. I didn't cry. Not once. Instead, I made myself some tea, opened my laptop, and started thinking about every client I had supported, every partner I had worked with, and every meeting I had prepared, sometimes single-handedly saving Jerry from big disasters. Karen made one huge mistake. She underestimated me. She saw me as just a secretary, easy to replace, easy to ignore. But when you pull out the one thread that's been holding everything together, things don't fall apart right away. The unraveling starts slowly and quietly, but once it begins, it's impossible to stop. And now, I was free, carrying every contact, every number, and every quiet secret in my notebook. She didn't know it yet, but she would soon. The next morning, I woke up early just out of habit. After 16 years, my body was trained to get up before sunrise, ready to check the inbox and solve problems before anyone else even knew they existed. Now, everything was different, but for the first time, the future felt wide open. Now, I didn't have a job. No more early mornings, no more commutes, no meeting agendas to organize. My to-do list was empty, and the house felt strangely quiet. But honestly, that wasn't the whole truth. Sure, Karen Garcia had fired me, but she didn't realize I hadn't left empty-handed. Not sneakily or illegally. I never took any files or company secrets.
I was always too honest about that.
What I did take with me was my notebook. It was just a simple, leather-bound journal, the kind you buy in a 3-pack at any office supply store. Over the years, I had filled dozens of these notebooks with little notes, reminders, observations, and, most importantly, relationship maps. It wasn't just names and numbers. I wrote down who mattered to whom, which clients hated being called before 11 a.m., which ones only signed contracts on Wednesdays, and who preferred handwritten thank you notes instead of emails. I even remembered which vendor once flew across the country for lunch with Jerry, and which clients did things out of real loyalty, not just obligation. Karen never asked about any of that. She didn't even look at my desk when she let me go. She thought she could change some job titles and everything would keep running smoothly. But a company isn't a machine. It's a living, breathing network of relationships. She just chopped out the roots. By Wednesday, just 2 days after I was fired, I got my first call. It was Dylan Clark, the head of acquisitions at Rodriguez Financial, a client we'd worked with for over 10 years. "Patricia," he said, sounding both warm and confused. "We just got an automated email from an intern about the quarterly report. Is everything all right?" I hesitated for a second. "They didn't tell you? I'm no longer with Garcia and Company." He was silent. "You're joking."
No.
"Is Jerry okay?" It was his daughter, I explained. Dylan made a noise. "Karen. So, she's in charge now." "Yes." There was another pause. "Well, that explains the mess. I won't get into the details, but honestly, you were the reason we stayed this long. You always made things work." We talked for a few more minutes. He never said out loud that they'd be leaving, but I could hear it in his voice, that first little crack in the wall. By Thursday, I got 3 more calls and 2 emails from other clients. By Friday afternoon, I'd heard from 7 clients in total. All were confused. Some were upset. One was downright furious because Karen had handed their account to someone who didn't even pronounce their name right on a Zoom call. "I thought we mattered to you," one message read. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I didn't work there anymore. But I started writing each message down in a fresh notebook. That Friday evening, I got a text from Amy, a former coworker from the strategy team. She'd always been nice, even when most people barely noticed me. "Hey, can I call you? Something's happening here." I texted back, "Of course." 15 minutes later, my phone rang. "Patricia," Amy said quickly, "Karen's freaking out. 3 of our top 5 clients have gone dark. No replies, no calls, nothing. One canceled a meeting and didn't reschedule. Karen is pacing around like a lion in a cage." I didn't say anything. "She's blaming everyone. Says the assistant she promoted doesn't know what she's doing."
Shocking, right?
"But you know what she's not doing? She's not taking responsibility. She just keeps saying we'll win clients back with innovation." Amy let out a dry laugh. "Patricia, she doesn't even know who to call. You were the only one with a real connection to most of our clients. She just assumed they'd stay because of the company name." I was quiet for a while, thinking. Then I asked, "Have you talked to Jerry?" "Not directly. He's out of town." Karen told everyone she was cleaning the house, taking the company into a new era. I could almost picture her, probably wearing a power suit, giving someone a lecture about synergy. Amy's voice softened. "People here miss you." "I miss them too," I said. We talked a little longer, sharing updates, before saying goodbye. I sat quietly on my couch, the whole house still and silent. Karen thought I didn't matter, that I was just another face in the background. But here's the thing about people like her. They confuse being seen with being valuable. In her mind, if you're not the one making grand speeches or sealing deals in front of everyone, you're irrelevant. But I knew my worth. And by Monday, Karen would understand it too. I hadn't made a scene. I didn't call anyone, didn't stir up drama, didn't warn a single client about my sudden firing. Yet something was already happening. The clients were leaving on their own, slipping away quietly. All I did was wait and pay attention, jotting down notes as the fallout started. Karen didn't realize it, but the avalanche had already begun, and she was standing right in its path. By Monday morning, it wasn't just a few ripples, it was a full-blown wave. I hadn't set foot in the office since she let me go. I didn't reach out to anyone, but somehow, the once steady pulse of the company was off. Even from my living room, I could sense the panic. At 10:35 a.m., Amy texted me again. 3 more clients pulled out. Karen's losing it. I just stared at the message, letting it sink in. In less than a week, 10 major accounts had either gone silent or officially left. I flipped through my notebook and looked at the names. These weren't just regular clients. They were the foundation of the firm, accounts worth hundreds of thousands every year. Each one had a long, personal history with both the company and with me. But Karen didn't think to reach out to any of them directly. Why would she? She believed loyalty was automatic, and that respect came with the job title. What she never understood is that loyalty is earned quietly, through late-night calls, thoughtful notes, last-minute schedule changes during a snowstorm, remembering birthdays, and all the small things that keep everything running smoothly. That was my job. And now I was gone. Around 11:10 a.m., an email popped up from Gregory, a vendor who supplied analytics for several big clients. The subject read, "Just checking in. Hey Patricia, I just heard what happened. Karen told us you left for personal reasons. That doesn't sound like you. I just wanted to say, I always appreciated your professionalism. Hope you're okay." I replied with a quick, polite note. I didn't feel the need to explain myself. My silence was already telling the real story. By noon, my phone rang from an unknown number. Expecting another vendor or old colleague, I answered. "Patricia, what the hell is going on?" said a deep, familiar voice. It was Jerry, the original CEO, and Karen's father. Instinctively, I straightened up, even though I was sitting at home in leggings with a half-eaten sandwich next to me. "Hello, Jerry," I said. "I just landed an hour ago," he started, "and my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Clients, partners, even a competitor, are all asking what's going on. They're saying Karen pulled some sort of power move and you're gone." I hesitated before answering. She fired me last Monday. Told me my job wasn't needed anymore. There was a long pause. I could picture him rubbing his temples like he always did when he was stressed. "She what?" "She told me she was planning a reorganization. I thought that meant maybe some changes in middle management, not firing the most trusted person in the company." "You trusted me," I said quietly.
She didn't. He sighed.
"I can't even begin to say how angry I am. And the clients, Patricia, I had no idea you were the reason they stayed. These people weren't just clients. They were relationships built over years. So when I suddenly disappeared, of course, they noticed." Jerry let out a heavy sigh. "How many have we lost?" "I'm not sure of the final number," I told him. "But last I checked, at least 6 of our top 10 clients were thinking about leaving." He shook his head, muttering, "She never even looked at the client ledger. I can't believe I left the company in her hands." "You handed it over," I said gently, "but you never showed her what mattered." There was a pause, and then his voice came back, quiet but serious. "Where are you right now?"
Home.
"Stay there. Don't talk to anyone else about this. I need to see things for myself." He hung up, leaving me alone with my thoughts. My heart was racing, but not from panic. This was the kind of storm that moved quietly and shook everything to its core. I realized I wasn't in the middle of the chaos this time. I had set it in motion. At 4 p.m., Amy messaged me again. "Karen just locked herself in her office. Legal is here. Something's happening." An hour later, Jerry called back. There was no greeting, just urgency.
She didn't tell me anything.
Didn't mention the firings and didn't warn me about the clients. But you know what shocked me? She had no clue how the contracts were set up. You weren't just a secretary. You were the main contact on 4 major accounts. Some clients only signed on because you were involved. "I know," I admitted. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I never needed the spotlight. I just wanted to do work that mattered." He paused, his voice softer. "I see that now." He sighed again, this time longer. She's not ready for this. There was a silence, and then he asked quietly, Patricia, what would it take for you to come back? I closed my eyes and let his words hang in the air. I didn't want just an apology, I wanted real change. I let the silence linger, knowing he was probably pacing, desperate to fix what was left of the company he'd built. Finally, I said, if I come back, I'm not going to just sit quietly behind a desk. Name your terms, he replied right away. I want full authority over client services. I'll report directly to you. My title will change, and I get access to all reports and client data. And it must be in writing that Karen has no say over my work. There was a brief, telling pause. I can make that happen. I'm not finished, I said. I want to set up a new onboarding process for staff, and I want to say in hiring. And Karen needs to issue a formal statement admitting her mistake. Another pause. That last part might be tough. I know. But if I'm coming back to fix things, everyone deserves to know how we got here. He breathed out slowly. Understood. At that moment, I knew he didn't just want me back, he needed me. Not because of loyalty or guilt, but because the company's foundation was falling apart, and I was the only one who knew how to fix it. The next morning, an official email arrived. Interim Director of Client Services, effective immediately, reporting directly to the CEO. The signed contract was attached, confirming everything I'd asked for. I arrived at the office just after 11. This time, I didn't sneak in through the side. I walked straight through the main entrance, my heels echoing across the marble floor. Every conversation stopped. People watched as if they were seeing a phoenix return from the ashes. Amy met me at the elevator. She looked like she wanted to hug me, but just gave a quiet nod. She's in the conference room, she whispered. Good. Jerry was already inside when I entered, and so was Karen. She looked pale and tense, her jaw clenched so hard you could almost hear it. A few department heads sat along the wall, unsure what to do. I calmly placed my bag at the head of the table and took my seat next to Jerry. Karen stared at me like I was a ghost she never wanted to see again. Jerry cleared his throat and began. As some of you are aware, we've had a few operational disruptions. Disruptions? Karen snapped, her voice tight. People were calling it a mass client exodus. Jerry didn't even flinch. Whatever name we use, we're acting now, he said. Patricia has agreed to return as a leader, starting today. Karen's mouth fell open. What? You made decisions without understanding what kept the company running, Jerry replied, blunt as ever. Now you're seeing the results. Patricia has the experience we need to steady this ship. There's nothing to discuss. Karen let out a bitter laugh. She's just a secretary. Or did everyone forget? I met her eyes. You're the one who forgot. I wasn't just a secretary. I was the bridge between the clients and our contracts. I didn't just know their names. I knew their routines, their needs, and what mattered most to them. You forgot that companies don't run on titles. They run on trust. Karen stood up, clearly angry. So, you're here to embarrass me? No, I said calmly. I'm here to save what's left. She looked at her father. You're letting her do this? I'm not letting her, Jerry answered. I'm asking her. And you should be glad she said yes. A long, tense silence filled the room. Karen didn't sit back down. She just turned and walked out, closing the door quietly but firmly behind her. Jerry turned to the rest of the team. We'll make a statement to our remaining clients this afternoon. Patricia will lead all client retention efforts. The department heads nodded, and a few looked visibly relieved. I stood. I'll need access to all communication logs from the last 4 weeks. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with. It's yours, Jerry said. I left the room with purpose. My heart was steady. Karen thought she could erase the past and start over, but she didn't realize she'd knocked out the company's foundation. Now I was left with the pieces. But I wasn't just putting them back. I was building something stronger. Karen was officially on the outside now. For the next 2 days, I barely looked up from my desk. My first job was to stabilize what was left. My inbox had become a war zone. Some clients were confused, some anxious, others angry. The worst were silent, and I knew that meant they were talking to our competitors. I reached out to each one personally. No generic emails, no empty promises. I wrote every message myself, drawing on years of genuine connection, mentioning birthdays, their kids' names, little frustrations I had helped solve, even late-night calls and weekend emergencies. I wasn't just asking them to stay. I was reminding them why they trusted us in the first place. By the end of the second day, I'd spoken to 14 clients. 9 said they'd consider renegotiating. 5 were still unsure, but I'd at least bought us some time. More than Karen had managed all week. That afternoon, Amy stopped by my office with 2 coffees. "You look like you haven't blinked since this morning," she joked, setting a cup on my desk. "I probably haven't," I admitted. She hesitated, then said, "Just so you know, Karen's been telling people she was the one who asked you to come back." I smiled. "You're not going to correct her?" "I don't need to," I said. "People can see who's actually fixing things." Amy nodded. "Still, it's pathetic." "That's just desperation," I said. "And desperation always leaves a trail." Later that night, I was still working in the conference room when Jerry walked in. He looked more tired than I remembered, the stress written on his face. "How bad is it?" he asked. "Honestly, we've already lost about 91% of our biggest accounts. If we can't save the rest in the next 10 days, we'll have to consider some major cutbacks." He let out a heavy sigh and sank into a chair. "I never thought it would fall apart this quickly." "That's because you underestimated what held things together," I said. He looked at me. "You mean you?" I didn't answer. He leaned forward. "Patricia, I let my daughter run this company into the ground. I thought the title would make her grow into the role, but she used it to shield herself. She didn't lead. She just gave orders." "Titles don't make leaders," I said. "Actions do." He nodded slowly. "So, what do we do now?" "You let me finish what I started," I told him. "You give me space to rebuild our reputation, not just with clients, but with our staff, too. Morale is at rock bottom. People are scared. They don't trust leadership. We can't promise stability to our clients if our people are worried about their jobs." He tilted his head. "And Karen? I don't need her gone," I said. "I needed her out of my way." He gave a tired smile and said, "Consider it done." By the end of the week, we started a real outreach campaign. Each team member got clients to call using the templates I made. We tracked every conversation and focused on taking responsibility, not making excuses. It wasn't flashy, but it was working. On Friday, Karen barged into my office, angry. "You're taking over. People treat you like the boss," she snapped. I stayed calm. "I'm just doing my job," I replied. "Trust isn't given, it's earned." She stormed out, but I didn't react. I just kept working because real value is shown by results, not by yelling. By Monday, things felt different. People were talking again, sharing ideas, and nodding at me with respect. I wasn't just the quiet assistant anymore. I was the one holding things together. Karen became a quiet presence in the background, no longer in charge. On Tuesday, Jerry called me in. He looked tired but relieved. "Your work saved us," he said, handing me a job offer. He wanted me to stay on as chief client officer, with real authority and better pay. I knew then my efforts had finally paid off. But none of that was why I said yes. I agreed because, for the first time, my title finally matched what I had done. I stood up and shook Jerry's hand. "I'll accept, but only if I can start a mentorship program. I want to help women, support staff, and anyone who's ever been seen as just a secretary or just an assistant. I want to make sure no one else is underestimated like I was." He smiled and said, "Consider it done." I walked out of his office with the offer letter in my hand and a new sense of purpose burning inside me. It wasn't anger or revenge, it was real drive. Later that day, I passed the glass conference room where Karen used to be in charge. She was standing alone, looking out the window, her arms crossed. She looked different, no makeup, no stiff posture, just tired. When she noticed me, she spoke quietly. "I know you think I don't deserve this office." "I don't think about it," I replied. "Deserving it isn't the point. It's about what you do with the chance you get." She looked away. "You made me look weak." "No, I said firmly. You did that yourself. I just stopped covering for it. There was a long silence. Then, almost softly, she asked, "Did you hate me?" "No," I told her honestly. "I felt sorry for you. You had a legacy handed to you, but you never took the time to understand the people who built it." She didn't answer. I left her there, alone with her thoughts. That evening, I sat in my new office, glass walls, a view of the river, and a nameplate I truly felt I'd earned. I pulled out my old notebook, the one where it all began. The pages were worn, and the ink was fading. On the last page, I wrote, "It's not about the title on your door. It's about the trust behind it." Weeks went by, and the company didn't just recover. It got stronger. The mentorship program started quietly, but it quickly grew. Within a few months, engagement scores tripled. Former interns and assistants stepped into new roles. Confidence spread, and even our clients noticed. In the end, people aren't loyal to fancy titles or company logos. They stay because of the people who are there when it matters most. I was there, even when others thought I was unimportant. I didn't destroy anything. I simply let the old ways fail on their own. When everything settled, I didn't point fingers. I just got to work. That's true leadership. That's the kind of legacy that lasts.